What a.
And g'day viewers, I'm Michael.
And I'm Janet.
And welcome to this week's episode about the mirror of criticism.
Have you ever been on the receiving end of criticism that feels like a cut to your psyche? I think we've all been there.
What about when you're voicing strong criticism towards another? Again, I think we've all been that person.
So how and why is criticism a mirror? And what can we do to have it working in our favour so that we can step up and grow into our best selves?
If you want to learn how to maximise the positives of criticism and minimise the fallout, listen up.
What a.
G'day, I'm Michael.
And I'm Janet. And welcome to this week's episode about the mirror of criticism. Today we'll explore this concept and how it can serve as an inner reflection of the other person's struggles.
Have you ever been on the receiving end of criticism that feels like a cut to your psyche? I think we've all been there, haven't we? Words can wound, as English playwright Edward Bulwer Lytton wrote in 1839. The pen is mightier than the sword. I love that. And I remember that from Indiana Jones. I think it was The Last Crusade, was it? It was one of the ones where his English mate, where the pen is mightier than the sword.
Indeed, and it's often attributed to Shakespeare, but it was actually Edward Bulwer Lytton who wrote that. But written or spoken, words can create lasting damage that, unlike a physical wound, stays within the mind and the body as an unrelenting echo that we replay over and over again.
Yeah, we sure do. And we actually feel the same physiology when we replay it every time.
Correct. The striking comment, if you felt it in your chest, continues to resonate there. It's not good. But anyway.
It's not. What about when you're the one voicing strong criticism towards another?
Again, I think we've all been that person as well. Next time you find yourself dishing out strong criticism, pause and reflect on your words. Why? Because your criticism can be very telling.
Mm-hmm. So how is criticism a mirror? Well, for a start, criticism is an integral part of human interaction and can provide valuable feedback and opportunities for growth. So we call that constructive criticism. However, we also need to recognise that criticism can often say as much about the person delivering it as it does about the person receiving it.
The mirror of criticism reflects not only our own insecurities and fears, but also unveils the hidden vulnerabilities of those who offer the critique. Often the traits or behaviours we criticise in others reveal our own insecurities, and it reflects how we feel about ourselves. It's a way of protecting or defending our own self-worth, or indeed lack of.
So how does this mirror work? Well, criticism of others helps to avoid facing our own problematic thoughts, behaviours and issues. And what we call our fragile ego, or our own inner critic, finds comfort in criticising others rather than looking within and admitting that we are guilty of these same traits. And at times our fragile ego wants to protect us from feelings of discomfort. And at other times, when our inner critic turns on us, it inflicts more than discomfort. You know, that nagging voice that's inside our head that constantly judges, criticises and undermines us? It can be the most debilitating influence in our lives because it has the power to erode our self-esteem, hinder our progress and create a negative perception of ourselves. It can also stop you in your tracks and prevent progress of moving towards your goal.
It can have such a powerful negative effect. In many cases, this inner critic can be even harsher on us than our worst enemy because it resides within us and it knows exactly which buttons to push to inflict the most damage.
It's like some brothers and sisters, isn't it? It kind of knows which one to go.
Well, it is. It's like a little inner sibling that needs to be put in its place, but we'll get to that. One of the reasons this inner critic can be so damaging is that it distorts reality and magnifies our flaws, and it downplays our strengths and accomplishments. It creates an unrealistic and a harsh standard of perfection that we could never meet, leaving us feeling pretty much perpetually inadequate.
And it also reminds us of our past failures, our shortcomings and mistakes, feeding us a narrative that we're not good enough or capable of achieving our goals. It uses words like, "Who the hell do you think you are? You can't do that, and you don't deserve that." And the problem is that we tend to believe and internalise all its messages.
So how do we silence this pesky inner critic or fragile ego? It can help to give your fragile ego, or the inner critic, an identity. In my office, I have 2 Donald Duck figurines from Disney's 1938 cartoon Donald's Better Self. The inner critic or fragile ego is represented by a little red devil sitting on one of Donald's shoulders, and the strong, supportive ego is in the form of Donald as a winged, halo-clad angel sitting on his other shoulder. When I'm aware that the little red devil's getting mouthy, I tell it to shut the duck up.
I love that.
I encourage you to form a picture of your inner critic, something that resonates with you. It helps to give the inner critic a face and a name, if it suits. And next time you find your inner critic getting mouthy, have the conversation and tell it to stop. Say thanks for sharing your thoughts, but they're not welcome and they're not helpful. And if you find that inner dialogue continues, you can have a bit of fun with this visual exercise and either zip up the mouth or put a piece of trusty gaffer tape over it.
Fixes everything, Gaffer.
Truly, this is a simple and effective exercise.
So while overcoming the influence of our fragile ego can be challenging, it's essential for our personal development and well-being. It requires self-awareness to recognise when this little inner critic is up to its tricks and being active, and to differentiate its voice from our true thoughts and feelings. So by becoming aware of its presence, we can start to question its validity and challenge its negative messages. Yes, taming the fragile ego requires consistent effort and practice, and by replacing self-criticism with self-compassion, challenging negative thoughts, and surrounding ourselves with positive influences, we can gradually weaken its influence and create a more empowering and supportive inner dialogue.
So back to the mirror of criticism. Projecting our insecurities or negative traits and emotions onto others gives us an imagined license to fault find. So be conscious of what you first notice about people when criticising. Notice and see if any negative emotions surface. Take the time to write them down on paper. You can study them then and have a more objective stance around them. Why? Because getting things out of your head and onto paper enables reflection, self-reflection. You may find the notes you make reveal what's happening inside you around these issues.
So let's go back and talk about the nature of criticism. When it's given constructively, it can be a really powerful tool for personal and professional development. It can highlight areas that need improvement and challenge us to strive for excellence. However, as we've said, criticism can also be wielded as a weapon, driven by negative emotions, envy, or personal biases. It is in these instances that the mirror of criticism comes into play. The mirror of criticism operates on the principle that our judgments of others often stem from our own unresolved issues and insecurities. So what does that mean? Well, when we criticise someone, we are inadvertently projecting our own fears and self-doubts onto them. So by really looking into the nature of our criticism, we can gain an insight into our own hidden vulnerabilities and emotional wounds.
Quite often, a lot of it comes down to fear, because fear is such a powerful motivator. It influences our actions and our perceptions. When we criticise someone, it can be a reflection of our own unresolved fears. For example, someone who is afraid of failure may criticise someone else's ambitious goals, dismissing them as impractical or unachievable. This fear-based criticism arises from their own fear and apprehension about taking risks and stepping out of their comfort zone.
Jealousy and envy can also fuel critical behaviour. When we see others succeeding or enjoying qualities that we desire, it can trigger feelings of inadequacy. And instead of acknowledging our own insecurities, we may resort to criticising and belittling those who possess what we lack. And it becomes a defence mechanism to protect our little fragile ego. And understanding the mirror of criticism not only helps us gain insights into our own insecurities, but it also enables us to respond with compassion when facing criticism ourselves. By recognising that criticism often reveals more about the critic, we can detach ourselves from the negative judgments and respond calmly and with empathy, and remembering that it may have absolutely nothing to do about you. Responding with kindness and understanding can diffuse tension and create space for growth and understanding.
So when criticised, where is your attention drawn? What you are likely to find is that the faults and flaws we notice in others can be the very ones we're struggling with. Take supporters at a sporting match. There will always be those A-grade supporters who are passionate, proud and engaged in the game. And then there are the D-grade kind that hurl abuse and vindication at the players or umpires, or even supporters from the other side. From their D-grade seat, they yell insults about skills, plays, and at times take a personal dig. Not at all game-related. This is a really ugly side of sport.
The after effects of these armchair degraders is lasting and shameful. I'd like to see an ejector seat operation for those so skillful in degradation. The offending critic needs to hold up a virtual mirror, as all that they are saying is a profound reflection of their self. How often are they just sitting there, pie and beer in hand, not an athletic bone in their body, screaming abuse at players who train daily and eat, breathe and live the game of concern? Even worse, many of the degraders have taken to trolling players on social media with devastating effects.
That is the mirror of criticism. The supporter lacks all the physical and mental prowess of the athlete, so these insecurities become sledges of attack. People often say poor supporter behaviour is just a method of letting off steam and venting non-related frustrations. This may be the case in that yelling is a release, but the screaming, angry, red-faced, vein-popping, blood pressure-raising, abusive supporter is not releasing anything. They're actually just feeding the fires of their own inner hell.
So be fired up about your team and the game, sure, but the line between passion and poison is not to be crossed. Next time you hear abuse flying out of your mouth at a game, stop it. Simple as that. Stop it. And if you haven't seen the video from Bob Newhart, it's quite a funny one.
On YouTube.
On
it's
YouTube,
very good about stopping it.
It's just
Watch
called
it.
Stop It, Watch It. Stop it.
The armchair degrader critic is found in every arena of life, not just sport, work, socials, everywhere. They're all reflecting something of themselves in their dialogue. They are degraders because they inflict degradation, derision and damage. So when it comes to criticism, join the A-graders, make it affirmative, actionable, and best of all, authentic. Until next time, love and blessings.
See ya.